What's going on, baseball fans? How you doing? So let's start off with our first story. The Giants have signed Ross Stripling. I really liked Ross Stripling last year. I've been a fan of Ross Stripling for the past few years. I would have loved if the Red Sox got him. But for the Giants, they're getting a guy that I think was very underrated last year. You had Alek Manoah, Kevin Gausman at the top of that rotation for the Blue Jays. But Ross Stripling was very steady in the number 3 spot for the Blue Jays. And it came at a great time, especially with Jose Barrios having a pretty down year. But for the Giants, it's going to be a 2-year, $25 million deal. And hey, they're adding pitching depth left and right now. You added Sean Manaea just recently, and now Ross Stripling. And again, very underrated season last year. Taking a look at the numbers, he was in the bullpen for a bit as well, but he had 24 starts, 134 innings pitched, a 3.01 ERA, a 3.11 FIP. Now, Ross Stripling, this is going to be a guy. He's not really going to strike out a ton of guys. 7.5 strikeouts per 9 in 22, 8.5 in 21. But he does keep the walks down. He actually, while the strikeouts did go down last year, he also got the walks down and the home runs down last year as well. A big improvement. Ross Stripling, I think, in a spacious ballpark like Oracle, I think, and especially with the fact that he was able to limit the home runs last year as well. I think he can have a lot of success here with the Giants. They're taking a very similar approach from what they did going into the 2021 season, where they were just adding a lot of guys like Alex Wood, Desclafani as well. A very similar approach. And, I think this is as good of a time as any to get into our next story, and that is Carlos Rodon. What is the latest on Carlos Rodon? Well, we got a few teams in on Rodon here. Could he end up going back to the Giants? Well, according to Susan Slusser, that is still very much a possibility. She says here, sounds as if the Giants are, yes, still in on Rodon after signing Stripling. Pitching depth is always good, or they want to limit some innings in the rotation a bit. Now, how serious are the Giants in on Rodon? I don't know. It seems like, for the Giants, they've never really been a team to, yeah, sure, they went after Aaron Judge very hard for this lineup. Did not happen. They got Arson Judge, though. That's not too bad. But you don't really, there's not really a time where they land a pitcher when, especially with a contract that Rodon wants. He's reportedly wanting 7 years. He's going to get himself a pretty fat contract. Now, is it more, Scott Boras trying to rev up the amount of years that he's trying to get? Could be. They're always trying to put stuff in the media out there. But Carlos Rodon, he would be amazing for this rotation, obviously. I mean, look at the year that he had last year. I thought should have been a Cy Young finalist. But you added Manaea, you added Stripling. Obviously, Rodon would be amazing here. You'd have a rotation of Rodon, Webb, Cobb, Manaea, and Stripling. That is a very strong 1 through 5. And then Alex Wood, you could see, who obviously did not have a great year last year. You could shift him over to the bullpen. I think there'd be a lot of benefit, obviously, to bring Carlos Rodon back. But if he ends up not coming back, it is looking like the Yankees, who have been very in on him lately, bringing back Aaron Judge, they told him, yep, we're going to try and really make some improvements with this team. Because Aaron Judge, at the end of the day, yes, it's amazing the Yankees brought him back, but they're the same exact team. Sure, they added Canely for the bullpen, but they're really not that much different from last year. They need to make more moves, and it looks like Rodon prefers the Yankees, according to Brandon Cootie. For what it's worth, I'm told the Yankees are Carlos Rodon's preferred destination. And I've been saying this for a long time now. The Yankees need a number 2 starter. Yes, you got Garrett Cole, Cortez, Montas, Severino, Herman. That's pretty decent. But there, to me, is such a big hole in the number 2 spot in this rotation. I've said this a lot on the streams. I see Nestor Cortez more of a number 3 kind of a guy in a rotation. You need Rodon in this rotation. You need a strong number 2 behind Cole. I think a strong righty in Cole and a strong lefty in Rodon, I think, would just be huge for this Yankees rotation. So, and hey, you know what? They're motivated. They want to really try and make a deep run into the playoffs. They just have not been able to do that. I think Rodon would be a bit of a game changer. But he also mentions the Twins and the Cardinals. I've been saying this as well for the Cardinals. Their rotation, I like it. it's, you know, a pretty decent 1 through 5, but I just see a bunch of number 3s in this rotation. I don't see really a clear-cut number 1. Jack Flaherty could easily be that guy. He just hasn't been able to show the health to be able to show that he is a number 1 ace in the rotation. You know, sure, I love Wainwright, I love Michaelis, but, you know, again, these are more, you know, 3s in this rotation, you know, maybe 2s, but you need a guy like Rodon here. And for the Twins, hey, look, they got the depth. I do like what they have here. Gray, Ryan, Maile, Maeda is going to be coming back. Ober showed some promise last year along with Joe Ryan, but they don't have like a clear-cut 1. Gray, to me, is like a 2 or a 3. You know, Ryan, you know, could he take another step forward? Who knows? But I really, and they also could use a lefty. They got 5 righties in this rotation. Rodon would be huge for the Minnesota Twins. And this actually leads us into our next story. Speaking of the Twins, yes, they are going after Carlos Rodon, but they are trying to hang on to another Carlos, and that is Carlos Correa. According to Jim Bowden, my good buddy Jim Bowden, there have been indications that the Twins and Cubs have the inside track. Now, I'm going to say this. If the Twins can find a way to land Carlos Rodon, that is only going to sweeten the pot for Carlos Correa. I do think at the end of the day, the most important thing for Correa overall is he's just going to go with the best contract. But I think he also very much wants to win as well. And I think if you can land someone like Rodon, that is only going to sweeten the pot here. It's only going to make the Twins better, and it's only going to entice Correa to stick around in Minnesota. Now, the Cubs, obviously, they've been connected with him for a long time. I definitely think the Cubs could land him. You know, we've just talked about the Giants earlier. You know, supposedly, according to reports out here, Carlos Correa is the number 1 target for the San Francisco Giants. However, San Francisco, they've had hard times in the past landing these big players, especially when they've never really spent a lot of time on the West Coast. That's why they had, you know, such a good chance at landing Aaron Judge, because he grew up in California. And that's why they've, you know, been able to bring in these free agents like Jock Peterson, grew up in California. Mitch Haniger grew up in San Jose, California. So Carlos Correa, I don't know if the Giants are going to be able to land him. Now, the Twins, he really enjoyed his time last year with the Twins, really got along with the young players. A lot of people looked up to him into that organization. He got along with management very well. I feel like Carlos Correa definitely could end up just going back to the Twins. But if you can land Rodon, that is only going to sweeten the pot. Even I've said that 3 times now. But you got to, if you can, man, because listen, here's the thing with the Twins, right? The Twins have always had a pretty good team. Like we always talk about, you know, like Hall of Fame, you know, and then you got some players that are not quite good enough for the Hall of Fame, so they go into the Hall of Great. I've always looked at the Twins in that way. They've always had really solid teams over the years, but they've just never been able to take that next step to be like that World Series kind of a contender. Man, if you could add both of these Carloses, you know, bring back Correa, add Rodon, I mean, man, that's going to make you a really good team. They need both these guys, man. I definitely think the Twins, you know, if we're looking at their payroll here, I mean, they got tons of payroll space. You know, Correa, you know, bringing back 30, 35 per year. Rodon, you know, anywhere from, you know, 28 to 32 per year. I mean, that's going to fit seamlessly. If you're the Twins, man, you got to try and make something happen here. But we'll just have to wait and see. Speaking of the San Francisco Giants, John Morosi is telling us that the San Francisco Giants and Dansby Swanson's camp have been in contact this week about a potential contract. Now, the Giants, hey, like I said with Correa, maybe they might have a bit of a hard time landing him. Could they shift gears and turn to Dansby Swanson if Correa ends up going to the Cubs or the Twins? Obviously, yeah, very possible. I think Swanson would be a great fit in San Francisco. They need a shortstop, especially with Brandon Crawford on the last year of his deal. I would imagine the Giants are going to move on from Crawford after this year. I still think it's a bit of an awkward situation because that is your guy. That's your veteran guy. Been one of the, you know, fan favorites of this team for a long time. Been a very solid player for the Giants for a long time. This is your shortstop. Dansby Swanson coming in, you know, it's a winning player, so I can understand Brandon Crawford. Brandon Crawford understands how this all works. He knows that the Giants, they're trying to make something happen here. So could he end up, you know, just moving off? There have to be a conversation there, of course. But Dansby, I think, obviously would be a great fit for the Giants. They need another bat in this lineup. You know, you brought in Haniger. I did like that move. I think JD Davis actually has potential to be pretty decent next year. I like what they have here, but they still need another bat. But we'll just have to wait and see on this. Now, as for Dansby Swanson and maybe some other teams, you know, we've talked about the Twins. They're looking at Correa. Could they turn to Swanson again if they can't bring Correa back? Obviously, the Cubs. I think Correa is the guy that these teams are looking at first, and then Swanson could be the next guy. My Red Sox have been connected with him after losing Xander Bogaerts. I think there is definitely potential there if he is willing to maybe take a shorter deal, maybe with an opt-out, go back out into the market next year. I could see Chaim Bloom and the Red Sox be willing to do something like that, if Swanson would be willing to do something like that, if he feels like he can't get the contract that he's really gunning for this offseason. And then, obviously, just going back to the Braves. You know, the Braves are always just that really quiet team that are hanging out in the back. You know, we just saw it with Sean Murphy. Anthopoulos was just saying, no, like, we're probably not going to get Sean Murphy. There's no deal there. We like what we have, you know, with catchers right now. And then they end up just pulling off the trade. So I absolutely see the Braves just maybe, you know, connecting back with him. Maybe you could do like a short-term deal with an opt-out. Maybe you can go back out into the market again, come back for another year. I don't know. But there's also been the Dodgers as well, alongside the Giants in the NL West, that have been connected to Swanson. It's going to be really interesting to see where Swanson lands. I think there's a lot of different options here. You could do a few different types of contracts here for Swanson. But like I always say, we'll just have to wait and see. Let's move on to the Cleveland Guardians. They've been a little active this offseason, adding Josh Bell, and now they have added a catcher. They were in on Sean Murphy. They were connected with him. I'm very surprised they didn't land him, because they definitely had the prospects to get it done. Well, Oakland, I don't know. They don't like prospects, I guess. They don't like good prospects. So the Guardians, they turned to Mike Zunino. I think Mike Zunino, in the beginning of this offseason, I was saying Mike Zunino, I think, is an underrated free agent here, because this was a guy who was really good with the Rays, a power-hitting catcher. I thought he would have been perfect for the Red Sox. Now, he missed pretty much all of last year. He played in, 36 games last year. He ended up getting thoracic outlet syndrome or surgery for that. But he's looking like he's good to go. He's saying that he's healthy. And for the Guardians, if you're looking at what they're doing here, they added Josh Bell, and now they've added Zunino. Josh Bell, his power was a little down last year, but he's shown in the past that he could, hit, 30, 35 home runs. And now you're adding Zunino, who has shown he can hit over 30 home runs per season. So it's pretty obvious what the Guardians are doing here, because if you look from last year, they were 29th in home runs, only had 127, only in front of the Detroit Tigers. And if we're looking at ISO percentage, which is the amount of extra base hits that they get, they were 28th overall. So Mike Zunino, if he's healthy, he could definitely bring those type of numbers. If you're looking at his ISO percentage back from that 2021 season, he had a 342 ISO percentage and 33 home runs. Absolutely could be a huge upgrade for the Guardians. I like what the Guardians are doing this offseason. We'll just have to wait and see, like I always say, if they add a little more power. And for our last story, we're talking the Braves in this video. Let's finish with the Braves, and let's talk a wacky rumor here. Could the Braves trade Max Fried? Are you kidding me? I mean, this guy was really good last year. But according to Jim Callis of MLB.com, he talked on Hot Stove today. He was telling us that he is hearing there are some Max Fried rumors on the block. Are you kidding me? Like, this is crazy. I don't think the Braves are actively exploring a deal for Max Fried. I think maybe some teams are calling about him because they're thinking like, oh, hey, you know what? Hey, look at that Braves payroll getting up there. And hey, he's a free agent in a couple of years. He's got this year. He's going to be making 12.2. That's what Fangraphs is estimating. Then he's got one more year. So I think maybe teams are calling about Max Fried. This is a guy, if you're the Braves, you just don't trade this guy. I mean, why? You're in a great place right now. There's no need to trade him, in my opinion. Now, if you maybe needed prospects, sure. If your team is just not very good, sure. But to me, I think teams are more calling the Braves because, again, he is a free agent in a couple of years, and they've been giving away prospects and younger players. So they're maybe calling, being like, hey, hey, Max Fried, we see he's a free agent in a couple of years. You looking for some prospects? You looking for some younger players? Hey, what do you got? I don't think the Braves are actively looking for a deal. Now, if they were, they definitely would get a good package for him. According to Baseball Trade Values, the best baseball trade simulator on the market, Max Fried has almost a $60 million value. Why? Because he's young, he's very good, and he has a couple of years of control. This is an ace kind of a guy. Max Fried, I don't think he's going anywhere. I find this report, I'm not saying he's wrong, but I don't think the Braves are really looking for a deal for Max Fried. But let me know what you think down below in the comments. Let me know what you think of any of these stories that I've talked about here in this video. But that's all I have for right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.